Greetings, casters and magisters alike. It is I, Willis the Chillest, I specialize in ice magic, here in front of you with the 8th class guide for Barony. Today's class is the Mighty Wizard. Seeing as this is the first pure caster class I've done a guide for, I'm also going to be going over the magic system of the game, as it is integral to being able to properly play as a wizard. Wizards have a very specialized set of items, with the theme being, of course, magic. Starting off, you have a wizard hat and a wizard doublet, which both give 0 AC, but give 1 intelligence. Next, you have leather boots, a cloak of protection, and an amulet of magic reflection. In terms of weaponry, you have a quarterstaff, as well as a spellbook of fireball, and a spellbook of cold. The rest of the inventory consists of a magic staff of light, a spellbook of light, and 2 potions of restore magic. The wizard's starting skills are pretty simply laid out and very efficient. 10 appraisal, 10 alchemy, 50 magic, 50 casting, and 25 polearms. Seeing these skills, it's very clear the game is railroading you directly to being a caster and nothing more. This isn't a bad thing though, because magic, when done correctly, is very powerful. You may be thinking that the wizard is a pretty easy class, seeing as it is very powerful in the early game, but don't be fooled, that is not the case. You may start with 2 very strong spells, but if you use them too much, you're gonna run out of mana, and then you'll have to rely exclusively on your quarterstaff. So, you're gonna need to learn how to kite enemies, so you hit them with some magic, then finish them off with some melee. Let's talk about the magic system, since that's pretty much all you'll be doing as a wizard. First, magic staffs are nice and easy. They do a flat amount of damage, and casting a spell from one is free, but their downside is limited uses. You can repair them with scrolls of charging, but then you have to divide those between your staffs and your feather. Speaking of enchanted feathers, those will be integral to any caster build, so try to get one as early as possible. Now, aside from magic staffs, there's 2 ways you can cast spells, either from memory or directly from a spellbook. Casting from memory is what most classes do most of the time, because you don't have to carry the spellbook the spell came from, and as long as you have the mana, you can cast the spell. Casting from spellbooks has more upsides but also downsides. It's entirely just more. For one thing, casting from a spellbook allows you to use spells that are above your current magic and/or casting level, with a chance of you fumbling the spell, and it usually costs more mana. Casting from a book innately does more damage, or heals more, or whatever the spell does, it just does it slightly better. You can bless the spellbook with scrolls of enchant armor to increase its power even more. This is all balanced by the fact that spellbooks deteriorate over time. If you don't repair them, they'll burn up, and then you gotta find another one. You can repair a spellbook with an enchanted feather, so as I said earlier, they are pretty integral for a caster, since it lets you keep a spellbook that you've enchanted a bunch. With all this in mind, as a wizard, you have several sources of magic that you can use, with a quarterstaff as a last resort. You can actually use 3 different spells at the same time, 1 memorized, a magic staff in your main hand, and a spellbook in your offhand, so you can get a little crazy with it. On top of your obvious magic capability, you can also very reasonably get into alchemy, as you start with a decent little bit of it, and it would act as a good secondary source of damage, or support, seeing as you probably won't be using ranged weaponry. Unlike the past couple of classes, the wizard functions basically the same in both single player and multiplayer. For both situations, you use magic to do damage and have to be extremely careful about getting hit by literally anything. The main difference is that in multiplayer, you'll have other party members to protect you, so you can do your job much more effectively. Recommending weapons is very easy here. For melee, you'll want Gungnir. This should be very easy because if you just go to the Minotaur Labyrinth, you can kill the Minotaur super easily. Just spam cold and fireball, then boom, free Gungnir. In terms of what the best spellbook is, well, it kind of depends on who you ask, because some people would argue that you start with the best one, that being fireball, but I believe there are a few better options. If you want a purely larger amount of damage with no bonus effects, Magic Missile is going to do that for you. However, if you can acquire it, Bloodletting is even better. It does the same damage as Magic Missile, but it also inflicts bleed and slow. With this one spell, you're getting the damage of Magic Missile, the percentage-based damage over time of Fireball, and the slowness of Cold. The main problem will be actually finding a Bloodletting spellbook, because from my experience, they're decently rare. Recommended armor. This I'm actually looking forward to because I can finally say something different than stay naked, leather breastpiece only, or all the heavy shit. You already start with very ideal items of the head and chest slots, that being the wizard's hat and the wizard's doublet. Honestly, you could just keep these the whole game and enchant them as you go, and they'll be fine, but there are a good amount of other options. For the head slot, you could default to the artifact helmet, the Sphinx's Casque, which gives a flat +8 intelligence and never breaks, but it's not the most efficient headpiece available. Instead, you could use a circlet or circlet of wisdom, as these increase your casting level and your spell power, with a circlet of wisdom almost guaranteeing you get a point of intelligence when you level up. Even better than that, a mage's headdress will give more bonus spell power than a circlet, but specifically will give even more if it's a damaging spell. This is the hat you want for a pure caster build. It's stupidly good and gets even better when you enchant it. If you would prefer a build that maximizes mana regen, then an Apprentice's Hood is what you'll need, as it gives an increased chance to regen mana with your health regeneration. For the face slot, there's really only two decent options that help to optimize your build, that being a Visor to increase your melee skills, and a Pipe, which gives a chance to regenerate a point of mana instead of a point of HP. For torso armor, there's the Wizard's Doublet you start with, or you could switch it out for a Healer Doublet, which does the exact same thing. If you would prefer a little more AC, a leather breastpiece never hurt anybody, but the coolest and most stylish option would be a Vampire Doublet. This will completely turn off your health regeneration, but gives +1 mana regen, so this is for when you're min-maxing and can play the game perfectly without ever taking damage from anything. The last piece of recommended armor that I can give is the Wraith's Gown, as it gives +1 mana regen, as well as levitation. The hands and feet slots can be whatever you find, nothing that isn't also good on every other class. Finally, race synergies. Wizard actually has some really good race synergies, better than most of the other classes in fact. The most powerful of these would be Vampire, as it lets you start with Bloodletting and Levitate memorized, with the only real downside being a limited food pool. Insectoid is similar in this regard, as it gives you 3 more innate spells, but it has a hard limit of 100 mana, so I'd only recommend playing it once you are very experienced with the game and can kite without issue. Succubus can recruit from a wide pool of enemies, provided they are drunk or confused, but can use Polymorph to specifically recruit humans. Incubus is a really good match with Wizard because it starts with Arcane Mark memorized, which can negate a target's resistances and weaknesses. This means it's very good for the late game because most of the enemies in the Crystal Mines and Citadel have high magic resistance, so if you mark them, you are free to blast away. Both of the demon races can also wear an Amulet of Strangulation to gain mana for each tick of damage you take. Automaton is a good match because with the boiler system, you can generate mana way faster if you are below half of your total steam and your boiler is superheated. Plus, you can use Cursed Gear if necessary and not need to worry about it being stuck. Goblin is in a weird spot because its viability varies depending on how you play. If you prefer to just memorize spells and cast from memory, it's not a good choice because goblins can't memorize spells. If you do cast from spellbooks regularly and are planning on min-maxing your build, the goblin actually becomes the best race for any caster class because your spellbooks and any other weapons or armor will get double durability. I would not recommend playing Goatman because it's made primarily for melee classes, and I would heavily discourage using Skeleton as a wizard because having your mana regen reduced to a fourth of the normal rate just to get a revive and not need to eat is not really worth it in this instance. In short, nuke every living being by draining all of their blood instantly, become a living magical battery, and die to Ziggy because you forgot that he has magic reflection. That's it for the Wizard Guide. If you enjoyed, do like and subscribe. And have a good one.